Welcome to the Future Proof Leader. I'm Jessica Raypatch, and today we have Eric Pfeiffer, founder and CEO of MPWR Coaching. Awesome. Eric, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you. Let's kick it off with you just telling us a little bit about what you do.
Ooh, I love that. I had a younger protege when I started this business, and he thought it would be really clever to remove the vowels. And
Oh,
so,
nice.
so you got it,
Yes.
but usually there's an age bracket. The older folks who think it's an MPWR, and it sounds like a radio station.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Or I'm big
it-
on acronyms too.
yes, and younger folks, and there's no acronym, there's no hidden meaning in
Right, right.
power. But younger folks normally intuitively understand that it's empowered. So, anyways, great job
Thanks.
recognizing that. So as we've already talked about before you pushed record, I started a business about 9 years ago that is primarily geared toward culture transformation. So I have spent, probably the better part of the last 20 years working with a lot of different organizations under a previous mentor is where it started, but beginning to realize that oftentimes as leaders, as teams, as organizations, we're experiencing all kinds of symptoms, difficult symptoms, pain points. And if you think of like a cross section of a tree, above ground, you see the tree, the branches, the leaves, the whatever fruit comes off that tree, the flowers or the fruit. And that's where we, as leaders in our world, tend to spend the majority of our time identifying those pain points, frustrated by those pain points, and then, cutting branches and trying all the while ignoring where all that comes from, which is what's going on beneath the surface in the root system. And so when I stumbled upon this, I realized, wow, so much of the coaching that is available is predicated on an ability to change the tree above the surface, to modify it, to prune it. And those can temporarily solve pain points. But if there's not a change in the systemic part of the organism or the organization in this case, then those pain points will come back and they oftentimes compound into greater pain points. And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand the systemic dynamics of what makes human beings go round and round, the human experience through the lenses of psychology and sociology and all kinds of different disciplines to try and begin to develop a framework for myself to understand the interplay between the roots and the fruits. Forgive me, that was a nasty pun. But also to develop simple practical tools that we could train leaders in that would empower them to be able to not only diagnose at the systemic level what's causing all of this pain, but the ability to then transform those systemic dynamics. So, which then would lead to sustainable health and functionality. And so all of these pain points that had previously been undermining people's ability to work individually and collectively at higher levels really does the work of unlocking that potential. Because, when organizations bring us in, they're not bringing us in because their business systems are broken. That's for somebody else. They're not bringing us in because they don't know how to forecast their finances or, whatever. They're bringing us in because they're starting to realize human beings are the engine of every business and every enterprise in our world. And therefore, how human beings operate individually and collectively deeply matters. But like we talked about earlier, how much training have we received in those dynamics? And so most leaders feel woefully under equipped, underdeveloped to begin to deal with those human elements. And so what we've done is basically create what we call a leadership operating system, a set of simple tools, visual tools that you can draw on the back of a napkin that equip and train people to diagnose and transform their organizations from the inside out, from a cultural perspective to deal with the root systems. And once we train them and they're well practiced, it's incredible. They become literally masters of culture. And then what's really fun is to watch how they will take those same skills into their homes, into their marriages, into their friendship groups, into every other part of their lives, because they realize, wow, everywhere I go and I'm interacting with other human beings, this plays.
I
So,
love transferable skills. I love it.
yeah, right.
Now, when you go into an organization, where do you start? I'm curious. And you start with the CEO founder level and get introduce culture concepts and then trickle it down? You do it all at once as a group thing? How do you go about it?
It's a great question. I learned the hard way that if you don't start at the top, very often those higher level leaders will ultimately undermine what you're doing in the middle of the organization.
Yeah.
And so we do always start with the owners, the operators, the leaders, the CEOs, the president. The highest level is where we begin, because if we don't have buy-in with them, then change is not going to be sustainable. But and what we've discovered as well is when there is buy-in at that level, um, the trickle-down effect is far more successful than if we don't start with them.
So we talked a little bit before about
Before we
play.
hit record,
Yeah, before we hit record, that a problem I see or I saw in corporate America is that higher level managers and senior leaders, they're so focused on that ROI, the cost savings, all those things. So how do you change or shift that mindset and introduce the benefits of culture? How do you do that? How do you change the hearts and mind to make them care about that level?
so there's a saying that you're probably familiar with, that most people don't change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And so, sadly, most leaders or organizations come to us when the pain has hit a threshold that's intolerable. And that could be anything from their interactions with people on their team, that could be between a CEO and a board, that could be between board members, that could be, we work with a lot of family owned and operated organizations. People are often surprised to hear what a large percentage of the Fortune 500 companies are actually family owned and operated.
Oh, wow.
And so all those human dynamics, once the pain gets so high, they'll bring us in and say, we don't know what to do with this. They've tried turning people over. They've tried bringing in consultants for a short season. They've tried sending people to a conference. They've tried making everybody read a book on, how to play better together, whatever it is. And they found, man, it's just not moving the needle. And so when they bring us in, one of the first things we do is take them through an exercise where together with them, we help them begin to diagnose not only the symptomatic issues that they're experiencing that are so frustrating, but then to begin to help them see the systemic issues going on beneath the surface. And here's what's amazing. Once they begin to see the connection, they don't even know how they saw it, but we take them through an exercise where they see it and they go, oh my gosh, we've spent a lot of time, energy, and money trying to change the tree above the surface and never realize that until we change the root system, we're not going to really change anything. And once they see that, it's almost like hope fills their heart, and they're like, wow, now we can actually change. I tell people it's no different than if you go to a doctor. Why do we go to a doctor? Something hurts, something's not working right, and we go
Yeah.
to a doctor because they've been trained to understand what's happening inside our bodies that is probably causing the manifest symptoms that we're not liking.
Yeah.
But we trust that doctor to see those systemic issues and then to offer us a remedy. So if you go to a doctor and they say, I don't really know what's wrong with you, you're like, okay, that doesn't help me. But and that's what a lot of people feel with coaches and consultants. And I don't want to throw any coach or consultant under the bus. There's a
Yeah,
million great ones out there.
of
But
course.
what I've heard more often than anything else is we spent all this money over the last number of years to bring in these consultants and people to help us solve a problem, and it didn't really solve the problem. And I would say it's likely that either A, they didn't understand the problem you had and they were trying to solve a problem you don't have because that's the only thing, that's what they know,
Yeah.
or B, they didn't understand this interplay between the symptomatic issues and the systemic issues. If you can't see the systemic issues, then you'll spin your wheels trying to make changes that don't work. And so when they see it for the first time, it's literally like, oh my gosh, we could do this. And I say, not only can you do it, but if you'll commit to this process, we'll equip you so that you can do it when we're long gone, because we don't want you dependent on us for the rest of your career. And so that's, sadly, very few leaders come to us to get ahead of the eight ball. Very few leaders come
Mhm.
to us to say, hey, we want to create an empowered culture from the start of this entrepreneurial endeavor. Or,
Yeah.
they normally come to us when the pain has hit a particular threshold, and that's okay.
Yeah, we see that too. It would be lovely for someone to be like, hey, can you come in and assess? We think our process is amazing. Can you come double check, maybe spruce it
Uh,
up? No. everything's broken. Don't know where to go from here. Panic. Now we're hiring some. I think
Yes.
that's kind of the nature of the beast. It's very rare to get people to work ahead, but I'm curious about your change management. So I've been in like many roles where we had to implement new procedures, new policies, new systems. And there's always some people that are sick of doing it the way that's done, and they're so excited to embrace it. Then you get people that are like, no, I'm not doing that. I do it this way. This is how I do it. This is what I like to do. I don't want to talk to anybody. This is what I do. I don't care if I'm connected to anybody. So there's two different, I talk to a lot of people. And so I meet with people who have a system that's, this is from A to Z. This is what we're going to do. We're going to walk through it step by step by step. And then I have other, I guess, consultants that would come on my show and say, what happens is we go to meetings and exercises and we actually get them to come up with a solution for the buy-in. Because if it's them coming up with it, they're much more likely to follow the process and go forth. So I'm interested to see what your approach is. Do you have like a systematic approach, or do you have that kind of, I like to say, refer to my kids. If I want them to do something, I know if I just tell them to do it, they're less likely to do it. I'm like, what can we do about this situation? Now we can't go here, but what could we do? Oh, I know. Well, now they
Yeah.
just didn't think about what we didn't get to do. Now they're coming up with solutions of what we can do, and I didn't have to break any bad news. Now they're excited about plan B. If I said, "Hey, listen, guys, plan A not happening. This is plan B." What? They're so obsessed with plan A not happening. So what's your approach?
Oh, that's a big one.
I know.
I would say both and.
Okay.
So we have a leadership operating system. It is a set
Right.
of, visual tools. So there is a side of it which is there's a system, a process by which we introduce these tools, but the tools are only as good as they deliver on particular results. And so, it's all good and well to go to Home Depot and buy some tools, and if they just sit on the shelves of your garage, they're not useful. But
Right.
we buy these specific tools because they help us unlock problems. And so what we do is we introduce tools at a pace at which we can use those tools immediately in the laboratory of their real experience. And so we introduce a tool, we get them working with it, and then we immediately go into what are the real-time challenges that you are facing. And then we show them how to use the tool to solve their own problems. And that builds their confidence. And then they realize, oh, this one tool doesn't solve one problem, it can solve 10,000 problems. Right. And so it's a kind of there's a system that we go through, but we always try to engage that process that we've created in a way that honors the pace, the context that we're working in, the group of people, especially their real world difficulties that they're trying to figure out. And so it's a little bit of both, and it's a little bit organized and a little bit organic. And we found that that generally is the right integration of those two that keeps people moving without feeling forced or like a one size fits all model.
I like that. That's a nice balance because I mean, I feel like that is the solution, right? You have to have some kind of process that you've tested and tried and it's true.
Yeah.
There's never going to be everyone that wants to be on board either way. There's going to be, I feel like your job is difficult because you're dealing with a plethora of different personality types. Like the introverts, like I work with IT guys, coders, they want to work in the dark, they want to work standing up, they don't want to be talked to, they want some headphones. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
I give them what they want, they work like amazing. Like, hey, Jessica, this is what we need. Then I have other people that are like, no, I need to be collaborating. I work best in a collaborative environment. I need to be talking, bright lights in the meeting room, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of accommodations that you have
Hmm.
to, as a leader, I feel like it's hard to accommodate everybody. So I'm assuming your program kind of accommodates the different personality types to get them to
Oh,
integrate,
yeah.
which is huge.
Yeah. The phrase that I often will use is got to learn to live in the tension between the necessary framework with appropriate freedom. And what I mean by that is, I often use the analogy of, we call it a leadership operating system. The reason we refer to our toolkit that way is because one of the things we love about these smartphone devices is the flexibility that you and I can have a totally different set of apps on our phones. Because think of the apps being like, these are the things we're trying to accomplish. And so, think of all the different roles and responsibilities within a team or organization, different personalities, different wirings, different work preferences, different communication styles, just all of that. There's got to be
Oh, yeah.
room for flexibility in that. And yet there's also got to be a framework that allows all of these individuals or the apps to be able to work together without stepping on one another, without harming one another, without stealing from one another, right? And to be able to collaborate. And so, I mean, think of the number of apps on your phone that actually communicate with other apps to
Oh, yeah.
share information so that you're more productive. But the real genius of these devices is the operating system that you and I don't see. It is literally like a set of, think of it like parental software that governs the way the device operates, the user experience, and how there's a basic set of rules that all the apps have to follow, which is why you can't download non-Apple apps onto an Apple device because they don't follow the same rules as the operating system and all the other apps that are available on that device. And so it's just there's got to be enough parameters, not to suppress people, not to hinder freedom and flexibility, not to push people into a box, not to demand of people something that's unhelpful, but just enough structure and consistency so that the way we operate becomes more predictable and more dependable. So we all know in the early days of these smartphones, you'd have to constantly manually update your phone, the operating system.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Now it just does it at night while you're sleeping, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But that operating system is literally designed to do what we're just talking about. It's designed to empower the apps and the user experience to be able to accomplish so much more than we ever thought we could. Same thing with human beings, right? In any context, when we're trying to work well together with other people, there's an individual aspect and then there's a communal aspect or group aspect. And so there's got to be enough of that framework, enough rules of engagement that allows us to play well without harming one another or suppressing one another or, being robbed of any liberties or freedoms that we should have, that we can be increasingly more productive, more collaborative, more effective, more, accomplish more. And that's exactly what we find when teams or organizations download this leadership operating system is that some people in the early days will say, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure about this, and this is different to the way I see things. We say the same thing. Listen, in these tools that you're going to learn, I'll make you a deal. If any of these tools are asking you to be something that you don't believe is the best version of you, or you feel in any way, shape, or form is antagonistic, hostile, or incompatible with your personal core values, your belief system, your worldview, then we give you permission to push that one aside. Here's what's interesting. After working across so many industries with all different kinds of businesses, with people from every background imaginable, we've never once had somebody say that tool represents a kind of culture or value system or practices that are inconsistent or incompatible with who I want to be as a human being or the kind of team I want to be a part of or the kind of organization that I want to build. Never once. I'm always open to it,
Amazing.
always open to it.
That's amazing. No, I mean yeah, that speaks a lot about your system. And speaking volumes about it. So let's talk about the fun part. You go in, you work with the company, you do the whole process. What do you see after?
There, now we're getting back to the ROI question, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have that mindset too, but I just want I just wish more leaders would invest in their people
Yes.
because I feel like I was in that spot. I wish people would have invested in me. So the outcome, I already know the answer, but what do you see on the ground after?
Yeah. So let me start by saying this. We believe that people are the engine of business or any enterprise for that matter. How people operate individually and collectively is what matters when we talk about that engine. And culture, this is how we do. There's got to be a framework, an operating system that allows us to create the kind of culture that empowers people to work better individually and collectively. So that's the end game.
Mhm.
Now, what are the results? Oh my gosh. Individuals who go through our training feel far better equipped, first and foremost, to lead themselves effectively so that they're bringing a better version of them more and more to meetings, to conflict, to difficult situations, to failures, to, you name it.
Yeah.
And people are operating far more effectively together in solving problems, in creative brainstorming, in collaborative projects, in name it. So the human element, everybody is unlocking as a byproduct more and more of who they are and at an authentic level so that they can contribute more to whatever they're involved in. And so that's one ROI that we see hands down without question. Everybody says, I
Yeah.
feel so much more empowered. I feel like I'm a far better version of myself. I show up better. I play better with everybody else, and I'm far more effective. Great. The flip side of that same coin is less toxicity, less dysfunction, less unresolved conflict, less gossiping, less back channeling, less triangulation, less drama,
Love
right?
it.
For
Love
too
it.
many of us, our workplace feels like a midday,
So dramatic.
talk
Yes,
show.
I hear that a lot. One of the reasons why I left corporate America, to be honest.
Yeah,
I just want
yeah.
to, I want a good mission, a cool mission, a dedicated company, and I don't want to deal with the drama. I want to be surrounded by people who are motivated and dedicated to what they do on a daily basis, that are willing to put in the work.
Yes,
It's
yes.
hard to find a collective team that wants to do that. Like I said, the last time I've seen this was in the Marine Corps, maybe in the government intel sector, here and there in certain teams, but the camaraderie, the motivation, the dedication, the core, the pride, hard to hone in on.
Like we talked about before we started recording, I'm going to go back to this. Somebody had kind of teased you and said, "Oh, well, you were brainwashed in the military," and kind of reframed it to say, "You weren't brainwashed. It's that you were enculturated." The military is very painfully clear about this is the culture. In other words, the prevailing attitudes and behaviors that we believe we must subscribe to, fight for, and be accountable for, that will allow us to operate and to be as effective as we think we need to be. That's called culture. So they invited you into their culture, and you have a choice to make is, am I going to adopt and embrace this new culture? And experientially, it should unlock more of my potential. And we should be more capable of doing things together. So you can always test it. And then any aspects of your culture that you've brought with you, you're going to have to choose if it's incompatible with this new culture. I've got to choose to let that go, right? And so, or not bring that to work. So, yes, and I think that's where most leaders and organizations, if they don't understand the radical importance of culture, here's what happens. They have an accidental culture. They have a culture where everybody's coming in with their own set of expectations around attitudes and behaviors about how to handle conflict, about, whether it's okay to curse at each other or not, or throw fists, or, withhold information, or be territorial, or whatever the drama that comes up in the workplace. And so if I tell people you have a culture, it's most likely that it's accidental at best. And it's most likely that it is, in fact, undermining your ability to achieve more of what you're trying to achieve. It's almost guaranteed. Now, I'll tell you what, let me just throw about the ROIs that clients love to hear.
Yes.
So you talk about the people ROI, they're like, oh, okay, I might buy into this. But what
Yeah.
does this actually produce for the business? And I can tell you, because we just did like 15 case studies through a bunch of clients we've worked with over the years. Without naming names, one professional sports team, woefully under in their specific sport. And I was invited in, start working with the front office, started working with the ownership. And I told them, I said, this is going to be a journey, but if you will do the work, you want a championship caliber program, which is going to require a championship caliber culture. We can help you deliver on that. You've got to do the work. It's going to take longer than you want. It's going to be uncomfortable at many junctures. The cost is far more than the financial cost because you've got to learn this stuff and really buy into it. But
Yeah.
if you will do it over a period of time, you will not only see kind of front office, the executive area of the organization transform, you will also watch the performance of that team on the field, court, ice rink, whatever, transform as well. And I said, it's going to take, you're not going to want to hear this, it's going to take about this much time. And you're going to want to quit multiple times. And all I'm going to remind you is this is what you signed up for. Do you want to keep fighting for it? At any point, you can quit. It's your choice. They stuck through hardest part of this transformation process and have just in the last few months become the most winning program in their particular domain. They went from being like a mid-table, low-end organization, underperforming, all kinds of drama and toxicity involved, all kinds of dysfunction in their leadership and in the way that everything was handled, and literally radically transformed from the inside out. And now they are literally the most winning program in their league, in their respective sport. And I remember talking with, the higher level leaders and saying, guys, this is what we talked about. And it wasn't easy to get here, but you decided you wanted that championship caliber, program, which meant you had to fight for a championship caliber culture, because without the championship caliber culture, you're not going to get the championship caliber program. And now, so that's them. And then other organizations just ran through a litany of organizations that have been able to grow in terms of like just their footprint in their industry or the size of their organization or open multiple sites. All of it, the byproduct of getting the culture to a great place, not a perfect place, but a great place that now has allowed them to step in, to build, expand in ways they never thought possible or never even really thought they wanted to because they were so afraid of the drama. Just because, you multiply the business, the drama gets multiplied with it. It doesn't
Yeah.
magically go away, right? The more money you make, it doesn't mitigate against the drama. And so whether it's financial, I mean, massive growth. I mean, companies who have doubled, triple, quadruple, 10x, they're great. Happy for them. And I love to see that success because culture transformation, literally, it can't, little double negative, can't not deliver on greater results for the organization and whatever they're trying to do. It will. It's a direct correlation. However, my greatest joy personally for me is in hearing all the stories at different levels of the organization of how they enjoy coming to work. They enjoy partnering with people. And how they're the way, literally one of my favorite things is when I'll be on site with a client. Oftentimes we'll go out to dinner afterward, and sometimes they'll invite their spouses. And I can't tell you the number of times I get a spouse who says, on the side, "Hey, Eric, I just want to let you know whatever you're doing with my spouse, and
Oh,
it is changing the way they come home. It's changing the way they handle the kids, changing the way they view their physical health. I mean, it's just the benefits are so significant. And here's the beautiful thing. Drama compounds, so does health. And so when they start seeing the compounding health and how it leads to all these other breakthroughs and benefits, they just look back and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how important getting our culture right was. And I say the same thing every time. You didn't know. And now you do, and you've been on the journey. Now, please go tell more people because it's an injustice. Like I said earlier, it's an injustice to me. In my heart of hearts, I'm like, it is an injustice
yeah.
that people spend all this time growing up, training to go into some kind of career and profession, which is amazing. I love it. Whatever is starting their own businesses, going into this, going into that. And this training just isn't available
Yeah.
for people at those younger years. And so they're filtered into all kinds of organizations that mean well,
Yeah.
but are ridden with toxicity, ridden with drama, ridden with, really acidic competitiveness internally. People stepping all over each other's shoulders, try to climb the ladder. People who don't know how to operate well with other people, to resolve conflict, have hard conversations in healthy ways, all those things. And they just people get burned out. And I tell people the entrepreneurial era that we're in part, I love it. I'm a fan of it. I think is part technology. I think part what we see on social media. Everybody can be an entrepreneur now. I
Yeah.
also believe it is part reaction to people saying, I don't want to play in that space anymore. Even if there's the opportunity to go to a high level and make a lot of
Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
it's
That was
not
me.
worth the trade-off. And partly because the younger generations watched their parents
Yeah.
and they go, you spent all these years in that organization and that's what you got out of it?
Yeah.
That exposed the roots.
Yes.
And so I'm seeing the fruit of your life and things going on. And if that's bad, I am going to choose a different path. And so my goal is not to diminish the entrepreneurial
Yeah.
spirit of our country as much as to help those more established organizations, the ones that are really fighting to be a place that people want to come into and stay and grow and build and then maybe move on somewhere else. But it's not leaving because of the drama,
Yeah.
right? They're
I mean,
leaving because they've outgrown our company, which I hope that for everybody.
yeah. And it's sad because you would think that would be one of the most easy things to pick up on. Do you want employees to walk into a workspace not wanting to go to work? How do you think their performance is going to be in that kind of situation? Wouldn't someone want all their employees to walk in saying, "Ah, I can't wait to get to work on this project we're working on," and go
Yeah.
home and say, oh my gosh, we're at a breakthrough. We're coming up with cool ideas. I feel so innovative and I feel so heard and empowered at work. You're right, it does translate. You walk through the door after, I mean, I've been there. After being pushed hard for 12 hours, I walk in the door and then I have a million things to do at home. Well, I was just overtasked at work and nobody was there to say, "Hey, good job, Jessica, you did great."
Yeah.
No, it was
Yeah.
like, are we gonna meet the timeline? Are we gonna be done by next month? It's like the pressure was there, but never the return on what you invested into it, you know? I'm not saying everybody's bad, but I would say the majority people, it's the ongoing joke. Oh, work. Oh, so such a long week. Thank God it's Friday.
Ugh,
It's hear it all the time, but
it breaks my
so
heart. Yeah.
it does break my heart. So I hope everybody invests in your programs so we can start changing the culture in our
Yes,
country and
please.
the corporate. So
Yeah.
where can people find you? I know we're gonna wrap it up here. Where can people find you if they want to take
Yeah,
a
the,
shot
the
at it?
simple the simplest way, I mean, we're all over social media and there's all kinds of resources that people can just dip their toe in the waters of what we're talking about and learn more about us. But the easiest way is just to go to our website, which is mpwrcoaching.com. And we've got loads of free stuff on there. We're just trying to make this stuff as accessible as humanly possible. And they can book a call, and people are always surprised when I'm get on the call.
I
I've got a
love
team of
it.
people who feel called, but I tell people, no, I'm passionate about this. I want to talk to people. I want to hear what's going on. I want to hear the pain points people are experiencing. I want to know what's going on out there. So I just stay really closely in touch with with what's going on across the landscape of the workplace in our country. But yeah, we're super passionate. We tell people, just give us a call. Just give us a call. We'd love to chat. I tell people this always, two things. Number one, however bleak it seems right now, number one, you are not alone. You are not alone. And oftentimes for people at any role in an organization, but especially once we start taking on more leadership responsibilities where we have responsibility for other people, that role feels lonelier and lonelier the higher you go. And but you're not alone. And we need partnership. We need people to come alongside of us and make sure that we don't find ourselves in isolation, because that's a place that normally doesn't do well for people. And the second thing I tell people is, what is that old saying? We often overestimate what we can do in a day, but radically underestimate what we can accomplish in a year. I tell people, we're not trying to change everything at once, but these little changes that you begin to make will have compounding exponential benefit for every part of your life. And so just start somewhere. You don't have to have all the answers today. You don't have to know all this stuff. You don't have to become an expert in any of this. Just take one step today. That's one of our mantras. Just put one foot in front of the other. And again, don't overestimate what you're going to accomplish in a day with us. But you will be wonderfully surprised by what you can accomplish in a year.
I love that. You could also do motivational speaking. I think you'd be great at
I
that.
do a fair amount of keynote and speaking and stuff,
Oh, I
but
love that.
and I do it because I know it's important for awareness and whatnot. But I tell people, but my real passion is to get in the trenches and be on that journey with clients who want to do the work, and that's the most rewarding thing I get to do.
I love that. Well, I appreciate you on the show. This was such a pleasure. I'm in New York. I know you're not, you're in sunny California, but it's a perfect way to end my day on a positive, uplifting note. For all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Future Proof Leader, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Eric.